How to repair your hydraulic telescopic transmission jack VLT12. At first, be sure to tighten the release spindle. Then align the screw hole in the release handle with the corresponding hole in the release spindle. Keep the release handle in this position and insert the spring in both handle and cylinder nut. Then turn the handle with spring engaged half a turn counterclockwise and insert the screw. All special tools used in this video are available on demand. If you need to repair the cylinders, start by removing the jack legs. Lift the hydraulic unit and fix it in a vise or likewise. Remove the release handle. Next step is to loosen the cylinder nut and then carefully remove nut and cylinder assembly. Be very careful not to damage the cylinder parts and to keep them clean. Remove the O-ring and then remove the reservoir. Loosen the cylinder tube and carefully remove it from the pump block. If you need to repair the cylinders, start by fixing the middle cylinder unit in a vise with alu claws. Remove the small cylinder nut. And the large cylinder nut. Carefully remove the piston rod with distance tube. Remove the guide from the middle cylinder. Fix the piston rod in the vise and make sure the parts are clean and dry. Remove the sealing rings and O-rings from the piston. Clean the parts with a detergent and make sure everything is completely clean and without scratches or rust. Remove the scraper ring and O-rings on the large cylinder nut. Clean the nut with the detergent and make sure it has no scratches or rust. Exchange new seals on the pump. And on the small cylinder nut. Refit new scraper rings and seals on all parts. Remember to use plenty of grease. Make sure the scraper rings on the cylinder nuts are positioned correctly and without damage. Fix the piston rod in the vise and refit the O-rings and the sealing rings using a cone tool. Another possibility is to heat the sealing rings first before mounting them using a thin ribbon. Use plenty of grease and take care to position the sealing rings correctly. In order not to damage the sealing rings when remounting the piston rod, it's important to shrink them into normal size after mounting. Here we use a special tool, but you might also use a ribbon for shrinking. When you are ready to reassemble the jack, start by fixing the middle cylinder in the vise and make sure the small venting hole is facing up. Here we use a special tube to ease mounting and to be sure not to damage the piston sealing rings when mounting. Refit the piston rod. Be careful not to damage the sealing rings. Then refit the guide for the middle cylinder. Apply a bit of Loctite to secure the guide and make sure to tighten it. Make sure all parts are clean and without scratches or rust before you refit the two distance tubes. Push the big cylinder nut onto the middle cylinder. Make sure to keep all parts clean. Refit the small cylinder nut using plenty of grease inside, not on the thread. Apply a bit of Loctite glue and tighten the cylinder nut. Make sure all parts run freely. The next step is to refit the cylinder tube on the pump block. Make sure the reservoir is clean before you refit it on the pump block. Finally, lift the cylinder assembly into the cylinder tube. A crane is very helpful to avoid damages. Apply plenty of grease before you lower the cylinder unit completely. Tighten the cylinder nut on the reservoir tube until the release is correctly positioned to the right. Remove the oil plug and refill the jack with oil. Correct oil level is just below the filler plug, with the jack in its lowest position. Refit the oil plug. In order to bleed the system, place a small load on the jack and raise the jack a little. Then lower the jack again and refill with oil. Refit the release handle, giving the return spring a pre-tension of half a turn. When done correctly, the valve will close automatically. Last step is to refit the legs. Place the legs on a level surface and stabilise it, for example with a piece of wood board. Make the pump rest on the 2 through-going bolts and tighten the legs loosely by means of the 4 bolts. Remove the board and tighten all 6 bolts, starting with the 4 on top. Finally, test that everything is working okay.